Davante Adams, who was the wide receiver, the best wide receiver in all intents and purposes, the best offensive player, and could possibly be the best player for the the Las Vegas Raiders, has essentially requested a trade out of Vegas. Now, this didn't come out of nowhere. There's been he's had issues with the team as far as their ability to win games or lack thereof ability to win games consistently and to compete for, a Super Bowl. And it hasn't seemed like it's been seamless in Vegas. I mean, you hear a game ago, you hear the head coach Antonio Pierce talk about, people made business decisions, and we as an organization are going to make business decisions. And then I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm not saying that things are false, but it is odd that then out of nowhere, Davante Adams develops a hamstring injury that holds him out the game last week and is going to hold him out the game this week. And then you see Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Raiders, like a tweet or like an Instagram post, essentially saying that they're going to trade or trying to trade, or Davante Adams has played his last game as a Raider, which then he has an interview with NFL. Davante Adams has an interview with NFL Network, and he pretty much says, I can only control what I can control, which then prompted him to request a trade. And the teams that you're hearing. Now, obviously, there's teams that have a bunch of cap space. I think he would cost like $13 million for this year. There are a few teams that have cap space. The one that comes to mind right now is the Washington Commanders. I think the Steelers have it. But the team that you are hearing the most is the New York Jets. Obviously, Davante Adams, would be paired with the quarterback that he has seen the most success with, and that is Aaron Rodgers. Let me say this about the Raiders, first of all. I don't want to go as far as to say they're a poverty franchise. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to go as far as saying that. They did obviously see success back in the day. But when you look at some of the best organizations in football, you don't hear about stuff like this. Now, I know that there's somebody that's already vigorously tapping on their keyboard. What about the Chiefs and everything they went through this offseason? Yes, that is very true. The Chiefs are one of those teams that continuously have something going on. Whether we talk, I'm not going to go the history, but the Chiefs is one of those teams that has something going on almost every offseason, every year. Yeah, but the Chiefs also have arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. And the Chiefs are trying to three-peat. So that's a little different. But you don't really hear a lot of buttoned up organizations going through stuff like this. I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of a coach. And I'm not saying that Antonio Pierce has been a bad coach. What I'm saying is I've never heard of a coach, a head coach at that, liking a tweet or liking an Instagram post pretty much saying that Davante Adams is essentially gone. I've never seen a coach be in that situation. I'm not saying that I think it kind of goes to our second point in once the Raiders shipped or let Derek Carr walk, you kind of knew that the writing was on the wall for the relationship of Davante Adams and the Raiders. Davante Adams, the only reason why he went to the Raiders is because him and Derek Carr are best friends. They played at Fresno State together, and they have developed a friendship, great friendship. And that was Davante Adams even said it. That's the main reason why he went. Obviously, it's closer to his family as well, but the main reason was he wanted to play with his friend in Derek Carr. Now, I think the Green Bay situation with this organization and Aaron Rodgers kind of made it easier for Davante Adams to go, but he said he chose the Raiders because Derek Carr was the quarterback at the time, and he wanted to play with Derek Carr. So after a year of that, they shipped Derek Carr out of there, and that's why Derek Carr is now on the Saints. So once Derek Carr left, you kind of knew that it was just a matter of time before Davante Adams would probably want out of of Vegas. Winning cures all. Let me say that. You see that a lot in the NFL. It's like you can play for the worst. You can play in a place like Kansas City, like Buffalo, that has the absolute worst winters of all time. Yeah. Minnesota winters are so brutal that they had to build a stadium with a roof. Side note, P.S. I don't understand, bro. Like, if you are in a place, I guess I understand tradition and the environment or whatever. But if you're in a place like Buffalo, like Kansas City, like New York, like Cincinnati, where there are brutal winters, and the NFL is a winter sport, why do you have stadiums that don't have roofs? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not crapping on them at all, but why in God's name did Atlanta and Dallas prioritize a roof and not Kansas City and Buffalo? Like, I know those are newer arenas, or newer stadiums, but what are we doing? If you have inclement weather, bro, the Kansas City Chiefs played a game that was like negative 20 degrees against the Dolphins. There are people that had some people had to get their limbs or like arm or fingers and stuff amputated, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that was your fault as a fan for going in conditions like that. You could have just watched at home with the air conditioning, or with the heat, but still. If you play, and I will, this is one of those topics that I will stand on my soapbox and just, if you play in a place that has harsh conditions in the winter, and you're a winter sport, get a roof. I'm sure. Again, I understand it's so cool to play in the cold. No, bro, it's not. No. Damn. But back to what I was saying. Winning solves a lot. I'm sure that it's beautiful playing, like I just said, in Atlanta that has a roof. Or the Colts, they have a roof. Vegas has a roof. And I'm sure those teams would probably be a lot easier. And maybe Davante Adams would feel differently if the Raiders were winning. Winning cures all. You've heard this saying before. Winning cures all. And the fact that the Raiders not only shipped off the main reason, 95% reason why you went to that team, they shipped him off quickly or let him go quickly. You bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, that was horrible. You bring in Aiden O'Connell, he wasn't that good. And you have Gardner Minshew, who, shocker, everyone that was saying, Gardner Minshew, I don't think he is a starting quarterback, has shown that he's not a starting quarterback. It's no shocker to me that Raiders patience that Davante Adams had is gone. And then on top of that, you have your head coach liking posts. Again, this is the new age, bro. And whether it was an accident or not, that's a bad look on an organization. You know what it is? Say it like this. I'll say it like this. Imagine you are beefing with your girl, right? Or beefing with your significant other. And you accidentally like a post saying, my girl or my significant other is always tripping. I can't wait to get a new one. It could be an accident, but imagine how that dinner would go that night. Like, well, the saying is, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It happened. So now I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm not saying, I think Davante Adams does have a hamstring injury, but I think the hamstring injury might not be as severe if him and the Raiders were on good terms. So I essentially think that Davante Adams has played his last game as a Raider. Then let's get to the second point. Or the third point at this point. You got to ask yourself, what type of player is Davante Adams right now? I think that's what teams have to ask themselves. One of the toughest things that you can do is, and I think this is why a lot of players don't like being in bad situations, especially if you're a top tier player, is because now there are question marks about Davante Adams. And is he still a number one option? Is he still, remember, there was a long period of time where there was no question who was the number one wide receiver in football. That was Davante Adams. And those questions about Davante Adams and his impact on a team really only started to arise once he went to Vegas. So now you have to ask yourself, okay, he spent a couple years in Vegas. It hasn't really worked out. Is Davante Adams still a number one receiver? And I think, yes, he is. But I will say it like this, and there's kind of an asterisk. Okay, the wide receiver position is not a quarterback position, which is why you usually see a lot of times when people win when we talk about contracts or accolades, talking about MVPs and stuff, one of the biggest reasons why usually a quarterback wins the MVP is because that is looked at as the most important position on a football team. And how do I say this? The impact of a quarterback, especially a top-tier quarterback, is drastically different than a wide receiver. Not saying that a wide receiver isn't as important or isn't important, but Josh Allen going to a team is much different than Stephon Diggs going to a team. And that's no shot to Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs is still a top-tier wide receiver, and we're seeing that on the Houston Texans. But the Houston Texans would look much different if Josh Allen went over there compared to Stephon Diggs. So when you talk about Davante Adams, I think his impact changes when we talk about the teams. The few teams that we've heard is obviously the Jets, is the Steelers, is the Ravens, and the Commanders. Let's just stick on those 4 teams. And the Cowboys. Let's stick on those 5 teams. If we're talking about is Davante Adams that missing piece that could put your team over the top, I think there's only one of those teams that need Davante Adams to go over the top. And it's not who you think. Oh my gosh, Jalen, did you just do a tease in the middle of a show? Did I just do a tease in the middle of a show, in the middle of a segment at that? Oh boy. Look, man, if they say I'm not good, I don't know what it is. I don't know who you're talking to. I'm joking, but I think that team is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, no. As a Washington fan, I'm not saying I want him to go to the Dallas Cowboys, but when you look at the Cowboys and you look, their lone offensive weapon outside of Dak Prescott is CeeDee Lamb. And they know that, which is why they throw the ball as much as they throw the ball. They don't got nobody else to throw to. Brandon Cooks, he's getting older. He's struggling with getting separation, and he's hurt. Jake Ferguson, the tight end, he hasn't really emerged. Imagine a team with Davante Adams who still has the number 1 receiver capabilities and CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that's their biggest issue. I think their biggest issue, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is they can't run the ball. And just, I don't know why anyone's shocked that Ezekiel Elliott is not the same Ezekiel Elliott that he used to be. And Dalvin Cook, again, I don't remember seeing Dalvin Cook on the field yet. And on top of that, their defense can't stop a nosebleed, and DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons is out. So they have some issues, but I think that to maximize Dak Prescott, having Davante Adams would be grand. I'm very interested to see what he would look like on the Commanders. Obviously, as a Commanders fan. The Commanders don't have a legitimate number 2 option. And you would think that if Davante Adams went to the Commanders, then that would slide Terry McLaurin to the number 2 position. Seeing as though I still think at this moment Davante Adams is better than Terry McLaurin, I'm one of those people. If you have Washington's and Jaden Daniels is having a fantastic start to the career, fantastic start to the season, and he is doing it with not that much outside help outside of obviously Terry McLaurin, and you have Zach Ertz. I think if you put Davante Adams, that gives you a wide receiver room that has Adams and McLaurin. That'd be crazy. I don't know. And I've heard people talk about this, and I kind of understand. I don't know if any quarterback or any wide receiver any wide receiver of note, any number 1 wide receiver would want to go to Baltimore because of the system that they run, and because they run such a run heavy, because you have someone like Lamar Jackson and now you have someone like Derrick Henry. They run such a run heavy offense that you're not going to have the eye-popping numbers. But I will say this. If you put Davante Adams on that roster with an Isaiah Likely, with a Mark Andrews, with a Zay Flowers, with a Rashad Bateman, that would be... And then obviously you have Derrick Henry. You also have Nelson Aguilar, Justice Hill. That would be an offense for you. I'll say this. If Davante Adams went to the Ravens, which it would be a long shot because of salary cap and everything. If he went to the Ravens, I think that they would have. But I think right now you can argue that they have one of the best offenses in football. They would by far have the best offense. Because you have arguably the best route runner. You have, at least to this point of the season, the best rusher because Christian McCaffrey is hurt. Like, boy. I think it'd be great for the Steelers. You put him with George Pickens, and Justin Fields has had a pretty good season to start. They only have one loss. And then the offense outside of George Pickens and Najee Harris doesn't really, and Pat Freiermuth, they don't really have a legitimate number two, which obviously George Pickens would slide to the number two, and then you have Davante Adams. And remember, the Steelers were heavily trying to get Brandon Ayuk. So they obviously are in the need and in the want for a number one receiver. Like, that would be incredible. And there's a reason why I left the Jets last. Now, I didn't rank. That wasn't me ranking the most important to least important. That was just me just rattling off the teams. But I ranked the Jets for a couple reasons. Or not ranked. I saved the Jets for last for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is because I think out of all the teams I just named, the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Ravens, the Steelers, out of all the teams I just named, I think the clear-cut number one team that he probably will be going to is the Jets. Everything makes sense. There's a reason why when we were talking before the season, and even last year, we were saying if Davante Adams wants out of Vegas, 9 times out of 10, the team that he's probably going to go to is the Jets. I'm not going to say Davante Adams isn't going to fit for the Jets. When you have Garrett Wilson, who hasn't had a great season at all. He hasn't really done much of anything. In fact, Alan Lazard has had a better season than him right now, which is eye-popping, seeing as though we know how good Garrett Wilson can be. The Jets, I don't know, man. I think that the Jets have issues at their offensive line. Aaron Rodgers is not the same Aaron Rodgers that played for Green Bay. Not saying that he's not good. I'm just saying he's not the Aaron Rodgers that we obviously remember. He's older, obviously. I think he's going to end up, Davante Adams is going to end up with the Jets. And that's going to bring more pressure to a team that already has a mountain full of pressure. You even see it now. People are already turning on Robert Saleh. 9 times out of 10, if they do not win a Super Bowl this year, which 5 weeks in at this point, they don't look like a Super Bowl caliber team. I don't see Robert Saleh being there. To be honest with you, if you go into their bye week, whenever it is, I haven't really looked. If you go into their bye week and they have a losing record, I don't know if Robert Saleh finishes the year. I think Davante Adams would be a big get for the Jets. And hopefully it would open up the game for someone like Garrett Wilson and someone like Breece Hall, who the running game hasn't done much of anything. But I will conclude this part by saying Davante Adams, in my opinion, has played his last game in Vegas. And I think it's so interesting how we got here and but everyone that's been watching this situation since Derek Carr got left knew that this was happening. This was, in my opinion, the biggest foregone. This was more of a foregone conclusion than the Kansas City Chiefs making it to the AFC Championship when they've been the last 5-6 years. This was more of a foregone conclusion than that. So we'll see what happens, but I think, just like I think a lot of people think, that Davante Adams is a jet. It's just going to take some time. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.